Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Simona and today we will be talking about the books that I read in the month of April. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I read 19 books. It's the record for me. I never read that much books. Usually I read maybe max 10 or 12, but never 19. So I will try just to go through them as quickly as possible. I don't want to sit here for a few hours because I like to ramble like I'm doing right now. So the first book that I have my trusty reading journal, just a sneak peek. So the first book that I read in the month of April was by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince. It is a book about a pilot who one day wakes up in the desert because his plane has crashed, and he sees a little strange fellow, and that little fellow says that he is a prince, a little prince, and starts to telling the stories, his traveling stories, and the journey begins there. I read that book when I was little, so I decided that it's definitely time for me to reread that book, and I really liked it. I think I liked it even more now when I'm old. Old. Yeah, and I gave it 4 stars. It was a wholesome, very heartwarming, sad story, and I'm glad that kids read this book. That's cool. Another 3 books that I read on the webtoon. It's the comic series by Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith, and usually I'm not the one who likes comics, graphic novels. I think it's graphic novel because I just don't see the point usually. But this time this book was Lore Olympus Part 1 was chosen by Patreons on the Moonies, created by G on her Patreon, and I decided that I just give it a try because it's a graphic novel. You can read it quite quickly, and I loved it. I'm now I'm now a fangirl of Lore Olympus, and what this book is about. And this book is about a Persephone and Hades, their story retelling as if it was in our days. Their cell phones, their bars, their cars, and it was just so interesting to read. I read all 3 parts in one night, and I read the rest of the story on the webtoons, like I said. And I will definitely buy this book because I gave it 5 stars, no doubt. The easiest 5 stars that I could have given. Did I say that right? I think not, but I think you understand what I mean. So yeah, just you have to try it. Just give it a chance. You will see that it's an amazing story, amazing love story. And oh, Hades, he's such a sweetheart. And I hate Zeus now at the moment, but you have to read to know why. I don't want to spoil you. Another book that I read in the month of April was Snow White by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, and illustrated by Benjamin Lacombe. It is a very short illustrated story version of Snow White, and it is a Norwegian edition. It has amazing illustrations. I found this book on second-hand shop, and I paid maybe €1 around, but it's definitely worth that money. It's worth even more because look at those illustrations. It gives me gothic feel about this story because they're The color scheme is red, white, dark brown and black. Very interesting illustrations, interesting story. I think everybody knows about this story, Snow White. It's about a girl who is too beautiful to be on this earth and her stepmother tries to kill her. That's the short version of this book, and I gave it 5 stars for illustrations, 4 stars for the story, and I just rounded up and gave it 5 stars. Another book that I listened on my audio was The Shadow Man by Helen Fields, and in this book we have a, let's say, serial killer who collects his victims and locks them up in a apartment for very strange reason. And we have 3 people now. They wakes up in that apartment, and now they try to escape, and while they try to do that, they finds something very sinister in that house. It was a very interesting story. I always was on the edge of my seat, if I can say so. It was a page turner. I loved the detective. She's not the detective, I think she's a psychologist who works with FBI, and now she's sent to England to help with this case. And she self is very interesting, and at the end of the book made me question her actions, to say the least. So I hope that there will be more books by this author. Hopefully there will be a series about this detective psychologist, because she's amazing. I love her, strangely. So I gave this book 4 stars. Another one that I listened also on the audio, to be honest, most of these books I will talk today will be on audio. So the next one that I listened is You Had Me At Ola by Alexis Daria. And in this book we have 2 telenovela stars, and they both have some baggage from their previous relationships, and now they try to protect their hearts and tries not to fall in love with each other. But because they work together, because they are both the main characters in their series that they're making, of course of course they fall in love, and we can see all the story to that point where they fall in love. And I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't that special, this book. I didn't care what will happen to both of these characters. The main character felt very shallow. I don't even remember their names, to be honest. I think the story was too long, almost. And I felt bored for the majority of this book. I even skipped few parts of that book. So it is a generous 3 stars for me. Also on Kindle I read a book that I've got on NetGalley very long ago, and it was definitely time for me to pick this book up. It's the Muskets and Muskets by Lindsay Farrar. And this book is, I think it is inspired by Jane Austen novels, or it is a retelling of one of her stories, but I tried to read this book maybe for 2 months almost, and it was very messy story. I didn't understand what was going in this book. What was the point of this story? Why things happened the way they happened? We have a girl who has a family, who has brothers and has some sisters. Mother is of course one of those who wants to marry her daughters no matter what. She doesn't want to be married. She don't want to have a husband, at least for now. However, she meets a guy but that guy, I think, tries to seduce her sister, or they are, I think, seems like the sister of the main character and that guy are in love, but she's now jealous and she wants to go to be in the police or something like that. It just was so messy, and I just DNF'd at the middle of that book. I gave it 1 star. I just couldn't waste my time anymore. So unfortunately, not the best of books that I have read this month. Another one that I also listened on the audio, it was a quick book. I listened it in a few hours. However, unfortunately I gave it 1 star. It is a Hungry Souls. I don't remember the author, but it will be right here, I think. And I thought that this book will be about paranormal encounters, about it will be a collection of stories told by people about how they met the ghosts, poltergeists, demons, and so on. Turned out that this book is about religion. Religion, and in particular about the purgatory, hell and heaven. And it was so boring, and I'm not happy about that, because I don't like books like this. I don't like when the religion is pushed to you. And this book definitely did that, because yeah, if you're a bad girl, you will go to purgatory, and you can be in purgatory until the end of the world, and so on and so on. So yeah, not for me. I gave it 1 star. And then I read this one. It is collection of Edgar Allan Poe work. It's a Lithuanian collector's edition. It also has illustrations, very dark, very grim, very gothic illustrations in this book, and the pages are red and made like this, every page. So it was very interesting to read a book like this. I gave it 3 stars because some of the stories I loved, some of the stories I didn't like, some of the stories I just skipped in the middle of that story because it wasn't for me, it was too boring. But I think everyone should try to read his work because it's classic. Yeah, nothing much to say, only that I liked it and I recommend it. Another book that I listened was The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed. I gave that book 4 stars. In this book we have 3 girls that decide that it's time to take action and stop the bullies and the rapists at their school, the guys at the school who just goes and rapes the girls. The girls are now sick of that behavior, and they just want to have a revenge, and it's a story about that. And the book was amazing. I think this one should be on the syllabus of every school. Every guy, every girl should read this book because it was very thought-provoking. It was sad, and yeah, it made me think a lot about how I raise my own son and how he should be raised and so on. So it's very, very interesting, but at the same time very informative and important book. Another one that I listened and I gave 5 stars is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Jane Reed, I think the author's name is. And it was such a bizarre story. I almost didn't understand what was happening until the last page. It is something along those lines with the bunny, because of how weird this book is. In this book we have a woman who is going to meet her boyfriend's parents, and when they go in that house she finds very strange things in that house, and very spooky and creepy things, and the story begins there. So prepare yourselves because you will go on a very interesting ride with this one. Also, I read a Norwegian young adult sci-fi story, Den onde arven by Thomas Enger. In this book we have a 16-year-old girl, Julie, who goes in the woods and she finds something in those woods, and after she finds that thing she starts to develop some strange abilities, and of course there will be someone who wants to take that thing from her, and while she tries to understand what's happening, she discovers a lot of dark secrets from her own family. So it was very interesting to read. It was a very easy book to read and I flew through it, and I gave a solid 3 stars. It was actually, it's a quite interesting sci-fi story for young adults, and I definitely recommend trying this one. I know it's old, but nonetheless quite interesting. Last but not least is the old series that I listened in few days, is the Ravenel series by Lizzie Kleypas, and the first one is Cold-Hearted Rake. In this one it's a historical romance book. In this book we have Caitlin. She is a widow. Her husband died at, I think, on the third day of their marriage, or on the second day of their marriage. And now she's left with not only the estate that has a lot of debt, but also with 3 sisters of her husband. And because of the time period, she is like a thing that yeah, we have a guy who inherits that estate with her in it, and those sisters. And she's a spicy one. There was a lot of banter, there was a lot of funny scenes. I laughed out loud a lot of times, and of course they fall in love, both of them, and yeah, we go until that point when they fall in love, and there's ups and downs in their relationship. And yeah, it was a easy 4 stars for me. Another one in the series is Marrying Winterbourne. In this one we now read about one of the Ravenels. She's Helen Ravenel. She's a quiet one in the family. She's very sensitive person, however sensitive but strong. She knows what she wants in her life, and she takes the bull by its horns, or something like that. So she goes and proposes to Winterbourne. He is a strange one. He was a poor guy in his childhood, but now he has an empire of shops. He's a well-known businessman, and of course he wants to have all that is best around him, and he thinks that Helen is one of the best girls he have ever seen. So now they are married, and of course there will be ups and downs, like in the all historical romances, ups and downs in the story, and in the end it ends well. So yeah, I gave it of course 4 stars as well. The third one is Devil in Spring. I gave it 3 stars. In this one we have one of the youngest sisters, Pandora. She doesn't want to be married. She is a very creative person, and she has a project that she wants to work with and sell it and just stand on her own feet. And she turns up in a very delicate situation, and now she's forced to marry a duke. I think he's a duke. Lord St. Vincent. I think he's duke. The Lord. So he is interested in her, but at first he doesn't love her, she doesn't love him. However, because of that situation, now they are married. But in the end, there will be a happy ending. It was a quite interesting story. I gave it 3 stars. Not that funny as the previous 2, but as quite good as well. And then I listened Devil's Daughter by Lisa Kleypas. I gave it also 3 stars. In this one we have Phoebe. She's also a widow. She has 2 kids, and she meets one of the Ravenels. She meets Lord West, I think his name is. And her dead husband and West was enemies at the school they both went to, and she still feels a little bit of a grudge towards him. However, it turns out that he changed a lot throughout the years, and now she starts to develop some feelings for him. He is over the heels over her, and he tries to do everything he can for her. So we will see if he persuades her and they will fall in love. Wink wink, they do. I gave it 3 stars. Did I tell that? Yeah, I think that I did. Also, I listened for Hello Stranger by Lisa Kleypas, also in the same series. This one is about a doctor. Her name is Garrett Gibson. She is the first female doctor in London. We can see how difficult it was for her to be known, because she's very talented. She's very good surgeon, but because of her sex, she is not welcomed in majority of the houses. However, she meets one secret agent and she helps him. She saves his life, I think, few times, and they fall in love. And in the, I think around the middle of the book or towards the end of the book, we find out the secret of that secret agent, who he really is. And I gave it 3 stars. I noticed that I'm not that interested in secret agents and a little bit more political side of the books. I'm not that interested in that. That's why I gave it only 3 stars. However, I really like the interaction between main 2 characters. And the last one that I listened is Chasing Cassandra. It is about the youngest sister Cassandra in this family, and I gave it 4 stars. She is introduced with, also he's a businessman. He's a friend of Winterbourne, Tom Severin. He's a, like I said, he's a businessman, and I think it never was said in the books, but how it is described, I think that he has autism, or he's on the spectrum of autism, definitely, because of how he behaves, how he thinks, and so on. However, she sees him like the way he is, and she accepts him. And it's not that he pursues her, but she pursues him. And it was very interesting to read. It's not that typical in historical romance that the girl goes after a guy. Usually it's vice versa. But I loved it. It was very cute, very heartwarming story, and yeah, I gave it 4 stars. That are the 19 books that I read in the month of April. Hopefully I will read a lot in May. Definitely it won't be 19 books, I'm quite sure about that, but nonetheless, hopefully the next month will be good as well. And hopefully you will give a thumbs up for this video. You will subscribe maybe. It will help me a lot if you did that. And thanks for watching. We will see each other in my next one. Bye!